the British and the French arsenals become important. So arms control, nuclear arms control, has become multilateral. Now, the United States and Russia have obviously an important role to play in this, but they can't resolve that issue the way the Soviet Union and the United States could have 20 years ago. On a host of other issues, I think it's also clear that the decisions aren't made simply in Washington and Moscow anymore. We're dealing in a much more complicated world. And what we really need to do is move this relationship beyond sort of a Cold War mentality, a Cold War agenda, and think how the world is going to change over the next 5 to 10 years. And on the basis of that, decide what is in the best interest of Russia and the United States individually, and what, if anything, they should be doing together in order to meet those strategic interests. I think clearly, if you look at the dominant trends in world affairs today, you see that the dynamism is moving out of Europe into Asia, economically, demographically,
intellectually.
And this big question that we all know about and which we don't discuss, at least in the bilateral relation, is what do we think about China's role? And what type of China we would like to see over the next 5 to 10 years as it grows in power and influence? And are there things that we can do together that would shape the environment in which China operates so that we would get more of the type of China we would like as opposed to one that may be a greater challenge to both countries? Think about the broader Middle East, this tremendous struggle that's now underway between modernity and traditionalism, a place of tremendous demographic vitality at this point, an area in which both the United States and Russia, I would argue, need stability. How are you going to get there? What are the levers that we have? Are there things that the United States and Russia can do together to do that? So the real challenge, I think, for the relationship is to get past the feelings of injured pride, of blaming each other for what went wrong in the past, and trying to focus on what the future is likely to be, and how U.S. and Russian strategic interests may or may not overlap. And if we can do that, we can begin to form a positive agenda that's forward-looking, that puts us on course for dealing with future problems, puts an end finally to the Cold War. And that, I think, would be the best thing to come out of Moscow in the next couple of weeks. Forward-looking, a decision to put the past behind us.
Well, that's certainly one, particularly with the Middle East, where the change in the dynamic, or as our Soviet friends used to say, the constellation of forces, it really has made a difference, because Russia is so interested now in Israel and so little interested in Egypt the way they were. And they're really, look at who the foreign minister is in Israel. I mean, that says a whole lot.
He speaks perfect Russian.
And he thinks perfect Russian. Yeah.
But that's just one sort of point that illustrates what I was saying.
Absolutely.
The world is changing. The way we think of our interests are changing. Israel is in a different situation, in U.S.-Russian thinking than it was just a decade ago. Iran is clearly an emerging power, and we don't know what role it's going to play, but it will present challenges to both the United States
and in personal relationships. Just think of who the Russian foreign minister is, where his daughter went to school. And think about all that cross-culture and all the people who come, no matter what we think, the flow of Russians who've been in America or live in America and those extended families, that does make a whole world of difference.
But that's an important point that people haven't focused on, because what we've talked about a lot publicly over the past several years is its breakdown in communication between the United States and Russia. And certainly you've seen that at the governmental level in the last years of the Bush administration. There also hasn't been sufficient contact between the expert communities on a range of issues. But interestingly enough, if you think about the number of American students who have studied in Russia, Russian students who have studied here, this intermingling of families at this point, the business contacts, the contacts between our scientists, we're probably at a point where there's greater contact between Russian and American societies now than there ever has been historically. Yeah. Most of those people actually have positive impressions of the other country, of the other people. And one of the challenges, I think, for Presidents Obama and Medvedev is to mobilize this potential basis of support for a closer relationship and figure out how you can use that to begin to reshape the context, the atmosphere in which we talk about this relationship, and use it as a positive foundation for coming up with ideas, thinking about possibilities as we go forward.
We really to the point where a phrase you and I used to at least use as analysis 25 years ago, new thinking, Fyodor Barlatsky's famous phrase, really maybe in the minds of the two new leaders, and we hope that they take shape of it. Thank you for bringing your new thinking about this old and troubled relationship to iCastNews.com.
Thank you so much, Tom.
It was a pleasure.
For iCastNews.com, live and direct from the United Nations, with my colleague
Vladimir Kikila.
I'm Jonathan Sanders. Goodbye.